Speaking of Megalopolis, I think it's time that we jump into this. So this just came out. The IMDb plot summary. The city of New Rome is the main conflict between Caesar Catalina, a brilliant artist in favor of a utopian future, and the greedy mayor Cicero. Between them is Julia Cicero, her loyalty divided between her father and her beloved. Written and directed by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Adam Driver, Giancarlo Esposito, Natalie Emmanuel, Shia LaBeouf, Lawrence Fishburne, Talia Shire, Aubrey Plaza, and John Voight. So, like I said, this is movies I've been anticipating this for years. I actually never thought I'd ever see this movie at all. Like it's been
Yeah.
talked about for so many decades, and it fits in starts of it getting funded. So this was number one for me this year, and I thought it was incredibly interesting. I'll put it that way. I'll start with that. It was a very interesting piece that I do think I will need to see several more times to sort of understand. There's a lot going on because there's a lot going on in this film. It wasn't an unmitigated disaster. I wasn't bored. Does it all come together? Absolutely not. I think the ideas are much more interesting than the execution. And speaking of the sort of the ego thing you were talking about earlier, this to me actually felt more like he was almost too collaborative. It sort of felt like the actors sort of had too much control. And I know there was a lot of experimentation he was doing on the set with letting kind of the actors kind of go wild and do their own thing. And then, then they would sort of decide collectively on the set which direction to go in. This is actually something that when he stepped away from mainstream filmmaking after The Rainmaker, all the rest of his films, he was very much focused on actors and acting and rehearsals. And this to me came through of like a little bit too much of that. Like I wish there was more of a singular vision on the sort of the style of this. It felt a little bit too all over the place. But I will say as well, and then I'll kind of jump into your thoughts before we get into it more deeply. The acting actually is what held this thing together for me. The story was kind of a mess, but the performances were so interesting, whether they were dumb and entertaining or just really kind of wild and out there, especially Shia LaBeouf was I thought just so interesting. Like I've never really liked him as much actually as I did in this movie. And also Aubrey Plaza, I thought kind of stole the movie too. Like their performances kept me interested when the plot was kind of like, what's going on? Why is this happening? So I don't know. The acting was almost is the thing I think should have been uh better, but also helped me through it. That was sort of my first impression. We just note to listeners, we did see this just last night, so it's been less than 24 hours, and this
Mm-hmm.
movie's still like rattling around in my head. I actually had dreams about it last night, so it's gonna take a while to process this. But those are my immediate thoughts. What about you? What were your first impressions of it?
Yeah, very similar in the sense that it doesn't all come through. At the same time, I was not bored and I was definitely intrigued and something that I actually want to see again, just to kind of parse and kind of figure out a little bit more deeply. But I do think the movie has a lot of ideas and there's a lot going on to your point.
Hmm.
But I think where the ego things really comes in is that I think it's in the writing.
Yes,
And I
yes,
don't even mean the plot, but that too, but just also just the dialogues and how the movie is constructed. Like it feels very singular in terms of one man's vision and ideas. And I almost wish that he had somebody else writing the screenplay or some other collaborator to sort of keep, again, the same thing, constraints, and keep some checks and balances. Because there is, I think, an amazing, great movie in there
yeah.
somewhere. I
Hmm.
do think that. And I think there are moments where it really shines and soars and you're really intrigued because there's stuff happening at all levels. But overall, it's because the writing, I think, and then I'll get to the acting part, that it almost is laughable and that takes you out of it. It's just so on the nose, all these themes that he's talking about of utopia. And I know the movie is labeled as a fable, and I was thinking about that maybe I just don't like fable stories. I didn't like Poor
Yeah.
Things, which was labeled as a fable as well, and I
Hmm.
appreciate and admire a lot of the crafts elements and the performances, but I just have a tough time with that. But I also, on the flip side, sometimes also lazy, I think, because just because you're calling something a fable doesn't mean you just lay everything all on the nose. You still have to, you can still be subtle, even if you have a fable, and let the audiences sort of figure things out, I think that has a deeper impact.
Mm.
Again, this might be more of me, but
Yeah, yeah,
there's
yeah. I never
some
think
of
about
that
the
stuff
fable
that
thing.
just doesn't, it's just laughable. Some of these
Hmm.
lines and constructions and mountings are just laughable in my mind. But then on the acting side, I do agree, like it's sort of a, company of actors kind of situation where there are a lot of people kind of in different movies in a way, and some of them really shine as others don't.
Yeah.
I know you're not a big Adam Driver fan. I've always been a big Adam Driver fan. And I think to me, the movie stands and is interesting because of his performance. Like he
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
I think, absolutely amazing. Like if you take him out of this movie, this whole movie will be a joke in my mind. I was thinking about his career in the last like 5 years. He's worked with every auteur director there is.
Hmm.
And a lot of those movies have not worked fully, for all sorts of reasons, whether it's House of Gucci or Annette or Noah Baumbach's movie, what have you. But he, in my mind, always comes out as a winner. And that just says so much about an actor. Like he commits totally, even though this whole movie feels like a play,
Yes, it definitely does.
and
Hmm.
how it's kind of mounted. It's
Hmm.
overstated and everything is pronounced and visually stimulating on top of the play acting. He commits,
Hmm.
and also looks amazing, I think, in the Caesar haircut. Like, how many people can say that? Most
Yeah.
people don't look good in that haircut. He looks great. And the lighting on him and the way his whole posture and poise is just absolutely incredible and sells the movie to me. Some of the other actors that you mentioned, I think Shia is great, like weird and eccentric.
So interesting. Yeah.
I think, and
Yeah.
you need that. And I almost wish
Uh-huh.
that the movie had more of Shia and Adam Driver sort of going off at each other.
Yeah.
That energy, whenever they were together on screen, there's something happening. And that's the other thing. Like a lot of these people are not fleshed out. And it's up to the actors. The actors who are good and are great, they're able to kind of fill in the blanks. Others, such as the leading lady, who I think is the weakest point of the entire movie. She's very beautiful, looks
Mm.
amazing, but is unable in my mind to carry. And all the laughability that I was talking about often seems to be, I got that from her the most. Partly it's the lines that are
Yeah.
given to her, but
Hmm.
also I don't think she's as good as a performer to kind of really carry that material, but also fill in the blanks where there's not much on the page. And I mean, she has a pivotal role. She's the muse, she's the source of conflict happening. She's the one who's driving the story forward in so many
Hmm.
ways. She has a lot on her shoulders. And if there were a better or more seasoned performer there, I think this movie would have been 10 times better in my mind. And then I guess the cavalcade of old guys, I was not really into
John
that.
Voight I thought was great.
He was actually pretty
He's
good, but
such a good
Dustin
actor, and
Hoffman,
Hoffman was yeah, he was brought in late. It was supposed to
I
be
know.
James Caan, but yeah, Hoffman was the part also just what was that? It was
What was that part
unnecessary. That
exactly?
that part was unnecessary. But yeah, in terms of Natalie Emmanuel in that lead part, it's interesting because I felt that she has star power, and I'm really interested to see where her career goes. But in terms of this role, I did think the role just wasn't written well. And to me, the part of the movie that it latched onto the least was the love dynamic that was going on. So maybe that's just she's not, even though I think she has screen presence and was very interesting to look at, and I liked like watching her on screen, but she doesn't have the acting ability, I think, to make a part that is not
No.
fleshed out enough interesting. Or also too, maybe I was just more interested in the political machinations, like again, between Shia LaBeouf and Adam Driver and the whole like Catalan conspiracy update plot was what I was trying to follow, and the love thing just didn't. I didn't really understand like how she was amused or why she was that engaging to everyone. I mean, again, I felt Aubrey Plaza was a lot more interesting, and that role was just. I mean, I wanted a whole movie with her in it, like in that
Although
crazy WoW Platinum character. I don't know, that really
it's
worked
pretty
for me.
crazy.
It was
Yeah.
so I don't know, entertaining and fun.
Entertaining and fun, but I do think in a different movie. And I also
Yeah,
think she
yeah.
brings so much of her own baggage from what she's done in the past. I was like, oh, this is just April Ludgate, and plus, the White Lotus person or whatever, in Megalopolis. To me, it just felt like she's from a different thing that she's done so far. So it's a little bit on the nose casting. That said, very entertaining. I would totally watch that.
Yeah, her scene at the end with John Voight and Shia LaBeouf, not
Oh my
to kind of ruin
gosh.
it, a highlight. I think this scene will go down in
I
history
think
for
so
better
too.
or for worse in terms of what that was just amazing. The
That was
audience went
pretty,
went wild for that. And
yeah,
again, I don't know if they were laughing at it or with it or what, or whether you were supposed to
both.
laugh with it. I didn't understand, but that's what made it so cool. So I agree with you about sort of Coppola's ego in the screenplay for sure. I mean, this definitely was his treatise on the human experience. Like you could tell this is like his magnum opus in terms of what he wants to really say about the human condition and the human spirit, which on paper, I'm like, yeah, I'm actually agree with that.
Yeah,
Would in a way like this would be my treatise as well on the future and focusing on that and not letting the past sort of dictate your future and always dream big and think about the optimistic things we could do as a human species. So I admire that more than I kind of thought it came through in a way that wasn't clunky. To your point, I think that was just a little bit too heavy-handed, a bit,
oh yeah,
especially because I didn't think it fit well enough into the plot of kind of what was going on. I think the screenplay is what needed the most work here. In terms of visuals, though, I was very nervous going into this because the DP that he worked with on this movie has shot his last couple of the smaller independent movies
mm,
that he did, and I think those are some of the worst shot movies I've ever seen. They look worse than student films, and I don't blame Coppola as much as I blame the DP. So I was very worried about this movie, and actually, I thought the visuals were really cool. I loved the split screen, where it's like they'd split the screen into thirds to kind of show you different things going on at the same time. I loved the sequence when Adam Driver is going through the sort of the poorer parts of the city, and those statues of like justice is falling down and crumbling, and like all these. I thought that was just so amazing. So the visuals are definitely there enough. It just sometimes I wish they could have gone a little bigger and made it look sort of more overly dramatic. Because again, if you're calling yourself a fable, I want over the top stuff and
right.
on the nose and like really big. And some of it was there and some of it wasn't. I don't know if that was budget or just he didn't have as much of the vision just because of the DPs working for. I'm not sure. But then the craft side of things, this definitely felt like a big budget movie and something he hasn't done in a long time. I mean, I love the costumes, those jackets with the like the Roman like laurels along the
Yep.
sides. I want to buy that. Like that is
Yeah.
so cool. The costumes were great. I thought the music was great. So like
Yeah.
everything else was sort of coming there. Just the script, I think, even though he's been working on it 40 years, maybe he's worked on it for too long.
That's the
Maybe
thing, you know.
too many drafts and too many revisions and sort of what his initial idea was sort of lost. I mean, I would love if he had done this in like 1984 or 85 and hadn't had that bankruptcy that happened after One from the Heart. I wonder what this movie could have been. Maybe this would have been another masterwork of his.
I agree. I agree on the visual. Like the movie looks very good actually. And the way people are lit, and I
Yeah,
like sort of
yeah.
the mix of kind of actual real world settings like buildings and such, but also, graphics and all of that. But then I think when this is spoiler alert probably, but like as they start to show more of what Megalopolis is and this utopia, and most of it is CGI, and
Hmm.
sort of layering that with kind of creativity and all of his like life principles, like that's when I think the cheese starts to mount up in my mind, because it's like,
Mm,
okay, this is like too much, and none of the stuff looks very good though. It looks sort of amateur, to be
mm,
honest. Like, oh yeah,
mm.
of course this is what you imagined as utopia, with like grass and flowers and petals, and it reminded me of the sphere, Amazon sphere from
We're
Seattle. I was like,
we're
oh.
living in Megalopolis already. The sphere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's not very futuristic. Like, you should have imagined this a little more. Again, bring
Mm,
somebody else into your point. Like, this is why, going back to Poor Things, like, give Yorgos credit. Like, all the stuff that they built, real
true.
and CGI, is absolutely, you've never seen anything like that,
Mm,
and you want that wow factor from a movie
yeah.
like this that's supposed to be set in the future. And this looks sort of like an older person, I'm sorry to say, kind of imagining the future. But guess what? We're already there, So it just doesn't feel that reaching in my mind.
Yeah, like they had the Adam Driver and his wife are in this scene with Giancarlo Esposito and they're like in the future house and it's literally just a white room with curtains. This is the future. Yeah, though maybe he was trying not to be too like predictive of this is what utopia would look like, just trying to make a vague sort of, yeah, it's something that looks kind of cool and futuristic, but he's not putting a lot of time into designing like Metropolis or something. because it is a fable and it's more broad strokes, and you just sort of put in a little bit of how you would imagine maybe Megalopolis would look like. But at the same time, from an execution standpoint, like you are waiting the whole movie, like, oh, what is this cool new city going to look like? Other than the crumbling and the wealth inequality, I thought the actual current New Rome looked awesome. I love that
Yeah.
like Art Deco like mix of Roman stuff and modern New York City. I'm like I would live there if New York looked like that. I mean again, beside all the problems and everything like that, but
Right.
I thought that was cool. Like I want to live in this world, but not necessarily utopia, which I don't think Coppola necessarily had that in mind. One thing I want to make sure that we discuss just for the listeners is I'm sure there's people have heard about the interactive experience that can happen at some of the screens. Now this isn't happening at all of them. Even heard in New York, I think there's only one screen a day that is doing this in one theater, and we were able to see the interactive experience that was. When I first read the stuff out of Cannes, the reviews, this was just like, wait, what? There's someone talking to the screen. So yes, there. We last night saw it at the Chinese and IMAX Chinese theater here in Hollywood, and there was a moment in the movie about halfway through when the lights come up and there's a live person in the front with a microphone talking to Adam Driver's character on the screen. They had a like he
Hmm.
asked the question, Driver responded. What did you think about that?
First, I thought, is the movie done? That can't be it. But then a part of me was like, oh, I actually wouldn't be surprised if the movie was done because
Oh,
this
when the
is
lights
so
came up,
full
you
of
mean? Yeah.
yourself. Because at that point, I was definitely on the full of yourself,
Yeah.
you know, train. So I was like, oh, maybe this is it. Okay, great. I get to go home early. I mean, it's kind of cool now that I think about it. It's also very gimmicky.
Yeah.
Obviously, did it really communicate anything? Did it really elevate the experience in any way or make a point? Not really. It's a cool thing to try, I suppose. Maybe it should have been longer,
Hmm.
perhaps, I guess, for it to really land. Like, it's not something I'm going to remember, to be honest, that this happened. But my sort of overall takeaway is that this is a thing of big swings,
Hmm.
and not all of them land. But I do give credit that, okay, they thought about doing something like that. And that's, you get points for that.
Yeah, yeah, I sort of felt the same way. I was hoping that it would have more resonance in just the film or what the theme of the movie was. Like I was trying to understand, and I still don't really understand why he did this. Because if you're gonna use a gimmick, it's gotta have some connection. And I don't know why having to talk to Adam Driver was what was that supposed to like make you a part of the movie somehow?
I
Like
think
I don't
that's
know.
the
That
intention.
was the
Yeah.
intention, you think? To make the
Yeah.
audience feel like you're part of this too, because we're all building the
Right.
utopia together.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. Then to your point, maybe they should have leaned into it a little more. All it is one guy asking one question and him responding. I was hoping there'd be like a another question or some sort of dialogue between them would have been a little more ballsy
Right.
and interesting than just like one question and then one response.
I agree. It didn't even land as this was like a, pseudo live thing. Like there should have
Hmm.
been some back and forth that would have added to it. I mean, maybe he's also just trying to, in the whole like play theater like thing that
Yeah.
I think there's an element of that too at play, perhaps that, everybody who's sitting watching this is sort of part of it and such. So cool they tried, should have done maybe a little more.
Yeah, I was worried the whole movie like it wasn't gonna happen in our theater. So the second the lights came up and I saw the guy with the mic, I'm like, thank God, like I get to experience this because like maybe I won't see this again in a theater, though I definitely will see the movie again. And just sort of my overall take on this is again, it is a mess at times. I admire it a lot for what it's trying to do, and I definitely will be seeing this again. I mean, not in theaters probably, but I will be watching this and maybe it'll grow in my mind in terms of appreciation. I don't think it'll end up being like a hidden gem in his filmography, but I do think this will be talked about anytime someone talks about Coppola's filmography because it is that interesting of a piece, and I definitely recommend people see it
I
because
agree.
some people think it's great, other people think it's the worst thing they've ever seen, and those kind of things I always and look, he's a master, right? He's a master who's still around, so I do recommend people see it, even though I was not over the moon about it.
I feel similarly. I do recommend it. This year, I was thinking about this morning. We together have seen so many movies which with so much hype, and frankly, a lot of them were disappointing,
Hmm.
mainly because I was just bored. And the thing with this is that it's not boring at all. I was
Right.
very engaged and entertained, and it's thought provoking. It doesn't always come together, but I'm actually excited to watch it again.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there are not that many movies this year where I can say that oh, I actually do want to see it again. So I'll give it that. And Adam Driver is amazing. That's
Yeah.
my other big takeaway.
Yeah,
Like if
definitely.
you can weather this and stand out to be triumphant, like that just says so much about who you are as an actor, as a person. I'm kind of in awe of that, I think.
Yeah, that definitely shout outs to him for sure. He did hold the movie together and ground it when it needed to be. I thought he did an excellent job. Oh, total side note, did you notice the woman behind us in costume?
Oh yeah.
That was cool. Someone came to our screening in sort of a new Rome outfit where it was she was sort
Yeah,
of
she
dressed like
had
a
grapes on her
I
head.
know, yeah, I respect that.
I
You're
wanted some, but yeah. I was also hungry. I had not had dinner, so I was like,
yeah.
pass me some grapes, please.
I was not expecting someone in Megalopolis costume. Maybe she
No.
should have gone up and asked the question. They should have
I think she had seen this movie before. Like that whole group behind us, they were
yeah.
laughing. I think this was their third time watching it or something. Who knows? Or maybe they came from the Coppola winery. They were fired. So they came here. I don't know. And that's how she has the grapes.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, she took some of the grapes out. Yeah, good wine, by the way. Shout out to Coppola Winery. I think they do a good job. Hi there, it's Alex. If you like the review and discussion Karan and I just had, make sure you subscribe to our channel, Movies That Shaped Us, to get full episodes. Every other Wednesday, Karan and I review a new release and then discuss 6 other movies made by that film's actor or director and how they shaped us. Subscribe right now or follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcasts via the link in the description below. Hope you join us for the journey.